What is up, you guys? It's Twinless Twin, and today we're going to be doing a VOD review of a patron's match. They submitted the Blue-Black Mirror, which is definitely a tricky one, and I think that it's going to be a great one to review today. So, thank you so much for the submission, and yeah, let's just hop right over and get right into it. Okay, so we are on the draw, and let's just pretend we don't know what the matchup
so we're
is
here
yet.
for practice. We will mulligan this hand.
Mulligan, no lands.
A little land heavy. They didn't reveal a creature, so we're gonna keep this. I guess we'll put a land back, so it's not as land heavy.
Okay, so good job catching, like, did they reveal a companion or not? That's going to give you a really good idea if it's energy or not. However, I think that this hand, just having 4 lands already, I'm pretty keen to put back a land. However, I would be putting back the Undercity Sewers, not the fetch land, just because it's nice to be able to have flexibility to get your Surveil lands at instant speed, like on your opponent's end step. So that's how I would have resolved this mulligan. Because they didn't reveal a companion, I'm already thinking like Fatal Push is probably less likely to be super great, but it could easily be the Mirror, which is a place where Fatal Push is totally fine. So, I think that I agree putting back a land. I would put back the Undercity Sewer there.
Oh, a mirror match. I think the biggest thing that I'm looking for in this VOD is just a better way for me to slow down. I've played a lot of Arena lately, or since the pandemic, and it's really messed up my speed. I'm like on the go, I play too fast. So any advice you can give for that, I would greatly appreciate it.
I mean, being aware of it is number one, but I also think just having a process in place for just thinking a turn ahead and saying, what do I think my opponent will do in the next turn?
No reason to jam first.
What am I going to want to do in response to that will probably help you think and slow down.
I wonder if this guy's in the Discord.
Okay, so they pass with 2 lands.
If they play...
Right, okay, so right here, for example, now we've seen it happen, so I wish I had paused a second before, but like your opponent passes, they don't make any plays on turn 2, like when they're on the play, like I think they would probably jam Psychic Frog if they had it, so I'm assuming they don't have Frog, and then they pass, and I don't think it's a horrible thing to think like there's a decent chance they could have Bowmasters. I mean, the blue-black deck does play a lot of instant speed, so there's a lot of different decks they might have, or a lot of different cards they might have. But like Counterspell and Bowmasters are the 2 that seem most likely if they're just passing with 2 mana up. So I'd be playing with that in mind, essentially. And well, the nice thing is we have our own Bowmasters, so I agree with playing the fetch land and passing. I was going to say, like, you could consider Undercity Sewers here, but specifically because they might have Bowmasters and might flash it in end step, we might also want to flash in a Bowmasters, so playing the Undercity Sewer is going to be limiting. From their side, I don't really think it's usually super correct to flash in a naked Bowmasters like this, just because you're in a Bowmaster mirror, and so...
Yeah.
Okay, now here's another thing, right? Is like they flashed in the Bowmasters. The cleanest thing you're gonna get, right? Like, so you have 2 Fatal Pushes, which can kill frogs, right? It kills frogs or Bowmasters, but not Murktide Regents. But then you have your own Bowmasters here, and they were tapped out, and you had a clean way to flash in your Bowmasters, kill theirs, and then you have 1 left. And then you have to think, like, how do they punish you? Like, you don't have Spell Snare up. Does that really matter? Well, if they have another Bowmaster, maybe it matters. But, like, realistically, I think you want to Bowmaster their Bowmaster there. It's a pretty good, exchange for you. They don't have any mana up, so you're sure it's getting resolved. And you have double Fatal Push, which means you're not even afraid of them playing Psychic Frog, which is like the #1 reason to hold up Spell Snare. You're not really afraid of it. Spell Snare will have plenty of targets throughout the match. you know, that there's more Bowmasters, Psychic Frogs, counter spells. So I'm not worried about like converting Spell Snare like I might be against Boros Energy, where like, okay, I don't want to tap out. They could have a Johnny or Amptraptor. Like, the blue-black deck doesn't have as many plays that punish you for taking down Spell Snare in this spot. So I would play the Bowmasters.
I'm going to let them attack. And then I think I'm going to fetch for a swamp.
I'm going to pause when you fetch. I just want to see what... So we're working with 2 Harbingers of the Seas. They might have Harbinger also. I mean, fetching for swamp isn't horrible here. I don't love it either. I think it's fine. It isolates you from Harbinger, potentially lets you play your own Harbingers. The reason I don't love it is because like most of our spells require blue, not black. So usually I'd either want to get a dual or an island, and then we already have 2 black sources. But yeah, I think swamp is okay here. But I think you're about to play the Bowmasters.
Cast my own Bowmasters.
But now they have mana up, so
probably get countered.
Yeah, they can just
And then Frog will be survivable. Sure.
Okay, so you said, but Frog will be surviving, and it... Yes, like, maybe, but I don't think this is... If you had a Murktide, for example, and you were, like, trying to get them to tap their mana so you could resolve Murktide through a counterspell, absolutely, like, I like the idea of that play. But Frog, I mean, we know there's 4 Fatal Pushes in their deck. We know there's, like, you know, probably a couple other removal spells that might hit it. I just don't actually think Frog is that consistent in the mirror. So I'm just, like, not as inclined to try to, like, set up a Force through Frog. So I feel like I would have felt a lot better if they had tapped out, right, and we had Bowmastered their Bowmaster, and then, like, they had whatever they did, but we just, like,
okay,
had already made our play for the turn and didn't let them use the Spell Snare.
See if Frog lives. Or they just have the double. Alright, so Frog is in there. That's good. Don't expect it to live. This is fun. I haven't got to play the mirror match yet. This is only like my 4th game maybe with this deck. I don't feel that comfortable with it. That's why I'm playing in the practice range, so forgive me for that. Yeah, I just not confident enough yet to make that move. Okay, so they shocked in.
All right.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, they have.
I think we Spell Snare this. It'll probably get pierced, I'm gonna guess. Sure, that's fine. Now we can just Fatal Push the. You got me. Okay. So I do have to worry about Murktide. Why didn't they attack? That's weird. It's a good draw.
I think you're right to identify you have to worry about Murktide.
I don't think it's better for me to Fatal Push now.
Murktide is the most...
I don't know. If they play Murktide,
it's most difficult to remove.
I think I'm just dead, right? Because like we don't have any outs. We have Sink into Stupor, and that's it. I know that's what this matchup comes down to: is who has Murktide and who doesn't. Let's look at the sideboard plan that we have for this matchup, for the mirror match. So it's 1 Spell Bomb, 3 Stern Scaldings, 1 Extirpate. Okay. So if they attack, I don't do anything. This is so obvious. So we know they have another Bowmaster here.
Good read.
Which is fine.
I think that that's right. That's the read I would make.
Now the real question is, do I give this thing flying? I think I let them make the move.
Right, there's no reason to give flying yet. I mean, they might flash in a Bowmaster. And if they do, then we can give it flying. And probably push their Bowmaster.
Because they definitely have a Bowmaster in hand. Sure.
And they target the frog. Okay, so yeah, we do want to give it flying, I think. Or actually, we could just push this Bowmaster now.
So before damage, I'm gonna shoot the Bowmaster. Interesting.
I mean, I'm kind of back and forth here. Like, I think you could give it flying here, and then you can discard like Watery Grave to win, and like to save your frog. But I also think like if they want to just block like this, maybe that's okay. I mean, saving your Fatal Push is somewhat valuable in case they draw Psychic Frog. Then you're really only afraid of Murktide Regent. So like I'm split because half of me says I really want the card to try to find my own Murktide or to try to find a removal spell for their Murktide, or a counter spell, sorry. But then the other half is like, well, we could hold on to this push. I mean, the push is pretty valuable. So maybe I'm fine just letting them block and discarding the Watery Grave and going with that.
Why would they make that play? Alright, I want to use this Fatal Push on hopefully their frog and not a Murktide. But since we're waiting for them, I'm getting a little bit nervous. They don't play like they have it. Yep, I'm at 12. I think I can take this hit.
I mean, it seems to me that they don't
Playing
have
is
Murktide.
decent.
So yeah, start by attacking.
Okay.
All right.
Do we get the fourth one? All right, I'm actually gonna go ahead and let's do this first. I can see what's on top of my library. Do I want this card? I think I do. So I think we're gonna...
So you ask yourself, do I want this card? And you say, I think I do. I would think about that a little bit more, like, what does this card do that is so advantageous to me? Well, I don't think they have Murktide. But, I mean, to me, I kind of think that they might have Counterspell. They might have something like that. Um, Now this turns off like a lot of their, all of their black cards, which is nice because it turns off fatal pushes. Uh, so I don't hate it here. I mean, you can try. I guess trading for a counterspell, any card trades for a counterspell, so it's not like there's really any card that you would top over that doesn't trade for a counterspell. Yeah, I think that this is a pretty reasonable card to top. It at least forces out their counterspell, and if it doesn't do that, it puts them on really like just Murktide Regent as a relevant draw. And I just don't know if we actually have like enough draws in our deck that stop Murktide Regent, that we would want to like aggressively dig for those.
Gonna cast.
I mean, that's like the number one thing we'd want, but
this may be wrong. But we're going to play it anyway. See what happens. Sure.
Oh. Well, one thing there is you actually can use Psychic Frog to exile cards from your graveyard until Drown in the Loch doesn't work anymore. So if you had exiled all 9 cards from your graveyard, Drown in the Loch says counter it target spell with cards less than or equal to mana cost, right, in your graveyard. So at resolution, it checks again, and at resolution, it would see that there's 0 cards and the Harbinger costs 3, so it wouldn't work. So you had, I see down there, your face covers most of it, but I see you had 9 cards in your graveyard. You could have just done that right there, and that would have been a huge play. It would have taken them off black.
Okay.
So a bit of a trick play there with Psychic Frog and Drown in the Loch.
I think every turn I'm going to keep doing Cling, so hopefully they don't draw a Murktide. And they drew a Murktide. Son of a gun. No, they drew a Frog. Okay, never mind. Frog is okay. Yeah, we're going to push the Frog. And if they don't want me drawing a card, they can go for it. Okay, so they don't block. So I get to draw a card. Hopefully no Bowmaster.
Wow, nice. I think that because we have Cling to Dust,
I feel like
in
they
our
have a
graveyard,
counterspell in their hand.
we're right not to jump the Frog there.
But I think I should get it out.
Like if they want to chump block, that's okay. One thing to remember is we actually don't even need to exile all our instants and sorceries here, because we can do it later with frogs. Like if you think
they have like a consign to memory.
If you think they have counterspell, which they might or might not, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm convinced they do. But if we were suspicious of them having it, one way to kind of play around that is to exile a lot of the lands and leave the non-lands, knowing that like if we need to grow our Murktide, we can just exile those instants and sorceries with Frog later. But if they do have counterspell for our Murktide, then we have all those instants and sorceries still in our graveyard if we draw another Murktide, which is like really valuable.
Maybe. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wow.
Awesome. And we win this game.
Fantastic. Okay. So sideboard against Frog is a Spell Bomb, 3 Stern Scaldings, and Extirpate. Love it. And then we take out a Deluge, 3 Force of Negations, and then a Consign to Memory, which makes sense. Perfect. Okay. So I think in the mirror match, it's all about Murktide, but obviously, like, every match is that way, but especially this. So
That's right. It's all
I
about
don't
Murktide.
know what kind of hand I'm supposed to keep on these, but we'll figure it out together. Wait for them. Yeah, I'd say it's a pretty good hand.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we have an answer to a Murktide, right? Which you said that's a key card. We have some spells. We have some lands. I think this hand is totally
Yeah,
playable.
let's keep this hand.
Not like a perfect hand necessarily, but definitely very playable. We have an answer to their frog. Lots of answers to their frogs. Answers to bowmasters. So it's just a good hand with answers, and then even a threat of our own. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this one.
I think I'm gonna lead on the island here. Or dark slit, because I don't want to get like. So, question is like if they play frog here, do I spell snare it? They don't play anything. Okay.
That is a tricky question. If they had played frog there, like, do we spell snare it?
I don't want to jam into
push
a.
only cleanly answers frog, but on the other hand,
I will spell snare the
On the other hand, you might want to save your push
this.
just in case something slips under a counter spell later in the game.
I think that's the right call there. Because I don't want to get 2 for 1 and have to deal with both of them.
Yep, I agree.
So that being said, I'm probably going to wait to crack this on my upkeep or just not do it at all.
It's also heads up, yeah, you don't want to fetch because then you
I do need to be
effectively don't
mindful
have spell snare up.
of Harbinger. I don't think they play Harbinger, but I just need to make sure that if they do, I get a black mana here. Yeah, there's just no reason. Okay. I do want to get a Merc down at some point, but like not Merc, Frog, but I'm not in any rush. I think I'm gonna fetch a Swamp here. I just don't want to take damage. And we'll spell snare this. Okay. They want to fight.
I think
it.
so.
Now
On this one, I think I would have tried to fatal push instead. And the reason being that like spell snare hits counter spell and bowmasters, which fatal push doesn't really do, or doesn't hit bowmasters cleanly at least. So I would have probably gone for the fatal push in that spot and hold on to my snare. Like snare protecting a Murktide Regent from counter spell later in the game is pretty relevant. And then yeah, like you might be flashing in the bowmasters here. I probably would wait. I don't really think that the extra damage is too relevant. We also know that they probably have like Stern Scolding, Spell Snare, those cards in there.
Now I am gonna cast Bowmaster.
So I think just
because if
getting,
they spell pierce it, then I can just hopefully run out the Psychic Frog. Yep. Alright. I'm gonna jam the frog, I think. Murktide's nice, but I don't have enough for Murktide. It would be only like a 5/5.
What's wrong with a 5/5?
I don't know. Do I do it? No. That's okay.
Personally, I would,
Yeah,
discard.
I think looking back, I probably should have. I don't know. If they just had, like, if they have a go for throw, I just lose. So I think this is the better play.
I don't think you just lose if they have go for the throat. I mean, you discarded one extra card to your
this is gonna
frog,
die.
but
Okay.
you did that to get a Murktide down when they don't have counter spell up, which now might not happen for a while. Not only that, but we have a swamp. And
I think
so we
this
can't
turn, if
even
they
draw
tap
counter
out,
spell
I'm
to
gonna
protect it.
jam Murktide. Maybe that's the wrong play. Okay, they're passing. I'm going to pass back.
I would just
because I just don't want to run into it.
I
almost have enough. I just don't know. I like to wait a little bit longer before I decide to.
This is not a matchup where like the size of your Murktide matters as much, especially with this hand, because like we have Snare to protect our Murktide from their removal spells, which cost 2 mana. We also have Go for the Throat to shoot their Murktide if they play their own Murktide. And their removal is going to kill our Murktide. If they have it, it's going to kill it regardless of its size, right? Like in blue-red Murktide mirror, you have to respect Unholy Heat, so you really want your Murktide to be a 7/7 or bigger. That's like a huge deal in the blue-red Murktide mirror, and it's something that I always really emphasize. But in this matchup, like, I would just want to get this Murktide down and start swinging. And so I would have had it down 2 turns ago, and if they had the answer, then they had the answer. But if they didn't, then we're in really, really good shape in this spot. And then drawing the Snare again, like, we had a chance to slam a Murktide and protect it with Snare versus a potential counter spell. I would take that chance and, you know, force them to have the Go for the Throat or shoot the Sheriff or whatever, because usually it's just a 2-of. And, you know, even if they had, like, they didn't have counter spell, but they did have shoot the Sheriff, we have Snare now. So we drew Snare. So, yeah, that's my thought. I would have gone for it.
To, like, try to win a counter war when all I have is a spell Snare.
I mean, realistically, you have to ask yourself, like, what do I gain from waiting? How long is it going to take for me to win a counter war? Right? That's what I would be asking. And then
okay, now if they tap out for a...
You snare the frog here, and they do counterspell. But I would have tried to push the frog probably resolves. And saved my snare, because you're more worried about resolving this. Like, you're more worried about resolving this Murktide than you are about killing their frog right now. And they're probably even going to, like, fight over the Fatal Push, and then you get to use the Fatal Push. Well, I guess you're going to get to use the Fatal Push anyways. Okay, yeah, but, like, if they had just let the snare resolve on the frog, you still have the Fatal Push in hand. And, like, that actually helps you start a fight over Fatal Push, and then get an extra card, make a bigger Murktide.
Oh, I should have done something. I turned them dumb.
That's okay.
Because they can just fawn it. Okay. That was a misplay. Yeah, I'm just going to go for it.
Well, I would play Preordained first because... Okay, yeah, there you go. I mean, an 8/8 is the best, right? Like, that's ideally what you want to do. And then bottom both of these because you're not really...
Maybe not. Maybe I shouldn't have been those.
No, you're right. You should have, because you're not worried about Bowmaster and Psychic like Frog as much anymore. You're kind of just saying, like...
That felt right. Now I could get blown out right here.
I'm looking to...
But I want to put them to the test.
Yeah, put them to the test.
And I have answers for, like, another frog. It's opposing Murktide is what I don't have an answer for. So, like, I need to make sure. It's also a 2-turn clock.
Good call out on the 2-turn clock. Like, understanding the clock is...
So they're going to cast their own Murktide?
We have Go for the Throat.
I'm going to guess this is their own Murktide.
We can kill their Murktide.
Yep. Okay. So they only have 1 card in hand. And I have the answer. So Spell Pierce. I guess they have Spell Snare. How many snares have they used so far? Only 1 snare.
This is the time.
I'm going to try with Preordain.
I don't think I would Preordain here just because of Spell Pierce. I think we saw Spell Pierce game 1, and I think we know.
Oh, wow. Frog actually is good because it lets me exile. Let's see if Frog resolves.
So you're just testing them for a Spell Snare here, basically. But they could have Stern Scolding.
There it is, okay.
They do have Spell Snare.
Okay.
Okay.
I was like, like, to me, that's a good read on my part, honestly. I'm trying to play a little slower. My thought process was if I get Frog, I can mill the 3 and then go from there. If that makes sense.
I probably would have cast the go for the
So I definitely think I'm going to go for it here, not this. I'm going to go for it.
But you got very rewarded. And
get it. Go for
Spellsnar's not a horrible read. Like, they hadn't been doing much with that card. And they didn't really have a window to resolve a Spell Snare. So, yeah, I think that it's not a bad read.
I don't think they had a choice. I think they had to counter the Frog because I would have been able to tap them out. Yeah, we're gonna cast this while we can, I think.
Yeah. Get the Bowmasters down. I mean, they have...
Okay.
Drew starts holding, so it doesn't matter. But,
I mean,
yeah,
you're still dead
to...
I guess if he has his own Murktide, he's still 1, 2... Yeah, I mean, it's still going to be just a chomp block. What does he do?
They have to find
exactly... He bottoms them both.
Go for that throat.
I have a feeling this is going to be GG. Yep.
Boom.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Hey, and I think that just going back and, like, thinking about... Okay, so they had, like, a bunch of cards for a while where they weren't doing much, and you want to like replay in your head, you know, like, did I give them a chance to Spell Snare something? And if the answer is no, then I don't think that Spell Snare is a bad read, right? Like, if they always, whenever they had mana up, you never gave them a chance to Spell Snare something, then by all means, like, okay, so they shocked there. That's, like, a pretty clear indication to me they had Counterspell, right? So I was putting them on Counterspell from there. I would have personally, like, Fatal Pushed and then Spell Snared the Counterspell if they go for the Counterspell, but I wanted the Spell Snare to protect my Murktide Regent. But regardless, like, yeah, we knew that they had a bunch of cards. They were stuck on lands. They weren't really doing much, like... Spell Snare is a card you can put them on. Pierce is another card, though, so I don't know. I probably still would have go for the Throated first, and if they had the Snare, then you can, like, preordain and look for something else, but not a bad read to read Spell Snare. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for submitting this VOD. I mean, I thought that you played this game overall very tight. I think that the one thing that was, like, I mean, the Psychic Frog trick against Drown in the Loch doesn't come up very much, so I'm not surprised that you didn't catch that right away. But otherwise, I think you noticed a lot of other small details, like how Frog was good to grow Murktide in that spot when two 8/8 Murktides were staring each other down. I think I personally would have prioritized resolving my Murktide when the opponent was tapped out a little bit more heavily, just because I know that most of their answers to Murktide is Counterspell. Right? Like, they have 1 or 2 removal spells when it's actually on the board, and then there's also Sink into Stupor, but I mean, that's like they're going down a card and we get our Murktide back, so that's not even that bad. Yeah, so I would probably be prioritizing resolving the Murktide when they're tapped out, but otherwise I think you played this match really well. Alright guys, well, I hope that this was helpful to you, and I hope you guys have a great weekend. And I'll see you guys soon with some more Murktide videos. Peace.